Hello, BookTube. It's a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday here in Boston. It's bright blue skies, bright white clouds, and it's warm. Warm, strong breezes blowing everywhere. It's probably in the mid-80s Fahrenheit, and we are reaching that point in Boston's calendar where you hit a day like this and you actually think, is this the last one for a long time? Should I be extra savoring this? It's just beautiful. Just beautiful. Uh, and I had errands to run bitterly early this morning, very early this morning, that brought me to the Brattle Bookshop in the middle of downtown Boston, right around the time when they were opening. The Brattle Bookshop, for those of you who are new to this channel, is a used bookstore in the heart of Boston. It's 3 floors, jam-packed with books, all at reasonable prices. And it also has an enormous sale lot outside, the floor plan of an entire other building. Thousands of more books for $1, $3, or $5. And the sale lot, the internal books change all the time. The Brattle's always out buying. And the sale lot changes all the time, too. And you can go there with $20 and come out with 20 books that are not junk. I mean, the books out in the sale lot are handled by lots of people every day. And that can have wear and tear. And a lot of times, books will be out there for a long time, too. The books that nobody wants will be out there for a long time. The most pitiless kind of democracy imaginable, if you put a dollar price tag on a book, and nobody out of the hundreds of people who look at it every day, or thousands that look at it every week, wants it, then, there is no harsher audience than that. No more merciless metric. But aside from that wear and tear by customers, the books that are put out in the sale lot are usually not junk, which is not always true for books that you will find in outdoor barrows of places like the Strand in New York City, where often the books that they get that are the dregs of a sale, somebody will come in with 18 boxes of books, and 2 of those boxes will be waterlogged, mildewed, falling apart, and they, instead of being thrown away as the junk that they are, they will be put outside in the sale lots at the Brattle, and the sale carts along the sidewalk. Not so at the Strand, not so at the Brattle. The Brattle puts out really good books that just don't fit in the store, or the staff there knows exactly what they want inside the store and outside the store. And I had another reason for going to the Brattle today that would have drawn me there anyway. But I'm kind of hoping that reason is watching this video. But I found a pile of books, and I want to show them to you. And the first one is one of those before and after books that I love so much. This I think was a Fern production. There was a bigger book-size version of these that came out in U.S. market, but I think these things were on kiosks in Europe. But I could be wrong about that. This is Pompeii and Herculaneum, and you see the cover shows you what you're going to get here. You get it's a spiral-bound book, and you get that is a vista that you would see if you went to Pompeii today. But there's a celluloid overlay to show you what it looked like 2,000 years ago. And it takes you through all of the locations of Pompeii and Herculaneum and gives you those overlays. So that you can see the tiny bit, there's a tiny bit that's remaining there. That's what it would have looked like when it was full. I love these kinds of things. I always get rid of them when I get them. The American versions were bigger; they were book size, and whenever I get one, I send it away to somebody. This particular book is for perhaps the most. I mean, the archaeologically trained out there would probably disagree with this, but I think for most ordinary civilians, this is the most famous archaeological site in the world because Pompeii and Herculaneum were buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. There you have wide open to the air, but that's not the way it would have looked. It would have had shadows. It would have had a nice pool there, and even this is bare-boned compared to what it would have looked like. Everything would have been painted. There would have been plants everywhere, herbs and spices hanging everywhere, drying stuff everywhere. Pompeii and Herculaneum have more grist for this kind of a mill than anywhere else in the world, because they were buried in the course of one afternoon. They were buried exactly the way they were. Not exactly the way they were in the before pictures that you see in this book, because they underwent a lot of damage during the eruption. You've got pumice falling out of the sky, building up on every single flat surface. So roofs were crushed, buildings were crushed, porticos and bridges and wells and whatnot were just flattened under all of that. But still, the main outlines, walking around in Pompeii today is, I don't know how many of you have done it, but it's downright eerie to do. You feel at points when you're walking around, you feel as if you could round the corner and run into the Steve from the first century AD, carrying books from the first century version of the Brattle. So I got, for $1, of course I was going to grab this. It's endless amounts of fun. Then the next one is a mass market paperback, and it is more booktube peer pressure. This is an author I don't like. I've given him many, many tries. But Noah, and everyone who reads it must converse, likes this author, and there are lots of other people on BookTube who do. And I found a book of this author that I think I can probably live with, and that will be worth giving it another try, and that's Philip K. Dick. And this is the best of Philip K. Dick. This book has seen better days. I will reinforce it. This will get through another read. This is these classic Del Rey best ofs. There's a gigantic series of them. I kind of wish I had them all. I'm slowly inching in that direction. The one that I love best of all is Cordwainer Smith, but I had not seen this best of Philip K. Dick in a long, long time. Philip K. Dick is a trippy, hippy-dippy, your book is really taking a drug, it's really a psychotropic drug type author, of a type that deeply enamors a great number of young male readers who get high plenty in their own life, in their non-reading life, but they want their books to simulate that. They want their books to be basically drugs. And they talk about them that way. Hey, you know, chapter 40, 40, that's the age of the main character, and 40 is the number of words on the page, and 40 steps from the bus stop to the character's front door on page 40 of the... It's like, yeah, how's the character writing? I don't know, dude. Okay, how's the pacing? Dude, I don't know. Okay, what's the actual quality of the language like? Well, dude, I don't know. I have no idea. But here, I found some more things. They're just these dull-eyed laboratory rabbits just waiting for their next hit. And Philip K. Dick plays into that in a way that I can't stand. I just can't stand it. When you transform the reading that you're doing into drug experience, you demean yourself and the experience. I'm not saying that Noah does that. One of the things that frustrates me so about his channel is that I can't reduce him to that. But he does like this author, if I remember correctly, and I have never liked this author. It just adds salt to the wound that the introduction to this volume is by a hippy-dippy, experimental, postmodernist science fiction writer who is really talented. John Brunner does what Philip K. Dick only tries to do. Same thing with Samuel Delany. He does the same kinds of shenanigans that you would think I wouldn't like. When they're done well, I do like them. Not when they're done poorly. So I'm not going to get The Man in the High Castle or any of those other Philip K. Dick novels that just fall apart. Instead, I will deal with this. I haven't read this best of volume in... I got all of these when they were coming out from Del Rey. This came out in 1977. I would probably have gotten it around 1980, something like that, and I haven't read it since then. So that's a long time. So I'll reinforce it and give it another try. Then we have a true find, a classic example of the Brattle will provide. Years and years ago, I found The Common Reader by Virginia Woolf, the reigning goddess of my own profession of deadline book criticism. I know she did lots of other stuff too, and lots of her book criticism happened for the TLS after she had become famous enough so that she wasn't on deadline. So that her editor would send her a book, and a year later she would claim with a totally straight face that she was still working on the review. She wasn't, obviously. It takes 15 minutes to write a book review for 800 words. It was just that she didn't have to worry about them firing her anymore. They wanted her more than she wanted them, and so it took forever to get a review out of her in those later days of the TLS and elsewhere. But at the beginning of her career, she wrote pieces regularly, and that puts her in my career, which is a great boon to me to think about. She's also fantastic at it. Absolutely fantastic. And she did a collection of literary pieces called The Common Reader that is amazing. Just amazing. And I have it in a couple of different forms. And I also found, years ago at the Brattle, a trade paperback called The Common Reader, the Annotated Edition, which not only fills in all of her allusions. She was an extremely elusive writer, so she's constantly dropping names, and maybe the very erudite readers of the TLS almost 100 years ago would have known all of those allusions, but maybe not. And it's fun to look at the annotations anyway, but it's not just that. It's also when she wrote this piece, did she mention it in her diary? That sort of thing. And I got The Common Reader, the Annotated Edition, and loved it. I reinforced it. I go back to it all the time. It's on my my books about books and reading bookcase, which is now completely full, but also full of room. No more overcrowding. And when I got that thing, I thought, boy, oh boy, nobody would do this. Nobody would do an annotated version of The Common Reader without doing an annotated version of the second Common Reader, the follow-up, her follow-up to that first book. So sooner or later, I will find it. And then the years went by, and the snows of yesteryear piled up, and I sort of lost hope, and then I found it. The second Common Reader, the Annotated Edition. How incredible. How incredible. So I will reinforce this thing, and probably end up reading quite a bit of it. I will probably reread quite a bit of this. And then the two of them will be together, in case I want my Common Readers annotated. There is a Common Reader, there's a trade paperback, that I think, was it Harcourt Brace Jovanovich did it? Probably 30 years ago. They were beautiful. Their first and second Common Reader were really beautiful and really well made, too. Really well made American trade paperbacks. I keep meaning to find those. Those are the ones that I would want to make what Jason Harrigan, the late lamented Jason Harrigan, would have called a reading copy. Those are what I want to be my reading copies, but these will do just fine in the meantime. And I found another trade paperback. This is a Penguin trade paperback, but I don't think it ever came out in the U.S. This is by Dennis Winter, and it's called Death's Men, Soldiers of the Great War. And it concentrates, the back jacket copy says it takes the war away from the politicians and the generals and puts it squarely in the hands and the voices of the men who fought it. And I remember this has come up for singular notice in a number of World War II books that I have read. Even if the World War II book in question is about some big battle and is therefore perforce going to deal a lot with generals. Mention of this book has come up standing out many times where the writer goes out of their way to say, in addition to all of this, there was also this book, and it was tremendously good. In the back of my mind, I pay attention to things like that. If an author doesn't want to lump a book in with all the others, but wants to make it singular notice, then I pay attention. I've never read this. And I'm always up for adding books to the World War I part of Steve's collection. Then this next one, I want to keep in mind, this is all from outside. This is all from the bargain carts of the Brattle, so this did not cost me a lot of money. But this thing is wild, that I haven't seen it before. This is the Poems of Catullus, who's one of my favorite poets, and this is in English language translation by Horace Gregory, who is responsible for my favorite English language translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses. And I'm in collections like the Latin poets or Catullus in English or things like that. I have encountered Horace Gregory translations of Catullus here and there, but never the whole volume. I guess it should have occurred to me when I was seeing those poems that probably a commercial translator like Horace Gregory would have done a whole book of them. He wouldn't just do one at a time, but it didn't occur to me. I was stunned when I saw this. Fantastic. So I will reinforce this. I'm not 100% sure that I love the cover. The cover is kind of boring. I might put a picture here. Or since I'd be covering Horace Gregory's name anyway, maybe a picture for the whole bottom here. And just the book can identify itself on the side there. But it's going to be a great amount of fun. Just like The Common Reader, it's going to be a great amount of fun to just read right through this. Also, I've never read Horace Gregory's introduction to this. Reading him about one of my favorite poets will be tremendous fun. Then we have, let's see here, a little knot of books that are going on that Books About Books, that criticism bookcase. It's rare that I find even one such book to go on that bookcase, but I found a bunch of them today, and that's a joy, an absolute joy, because those are the books I go to more often than anything else. My own profession. So if I'm writing up something, the Profumo affair or whatever, then I'm going to want to know what other people thought of it, what other people wrote about it, what they even wrote about particular books. And that bookcase represents, I had a rather nervous old friend look at that bookcase in its old location in my little book room. And this old friend, years and years ago, looked at it and said, "Oh my, I could never have a bookcase like this." I said, "Why not? You're a working book critic. Why couldn't you?" And he said, "Because I wouldn't trust myself not to steal stuff. I wouldn't, even if I were making a strict, warning to myself, I might steal things accidentally." He's not the only person who's looked at those bookcases like that I've had in various locations and said, "How can you do that? If you're writing about Liam O'Flaherty, how can you read 16 different authors about Liam O'Flaherty or the stories of Chekhov or whatever and not worry that you're just going to parrot all this stuff? How can you not worry about that?" I don't worry about that. I've never done it, and I don't worry about it. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a foible of me as a reviewer. My voice is pretty loud in my own reviews. No other critic is going to drown me out, and I'm pretty good at making attribution where attribution is needed. So I don't mind having these books. It's tremendous to find them. The first one is one that I have never read, even though it came from Yale University Press, and Yale University Press and I are two peas in a pod. This is the Terry Teachout Reader. A very attractive-looking volume. Teachout was a terrific critic, sort of an ombudsman of the intellectual world, and this has a lot in it. American Wayfarers, which is all about everything, so Louis Armstrong, Mercy Cunningham. Then Mid-Cultus, which is all about the writers of the day, including an essay called Norman Mailer, Forgotten But Not Gone. Then the third part is Down to the Crossroads, and it's just more. I mean, there's one on Willa Cather, there's one on Duke Ellington, there's one on jazz just in general, there's one on Humphrey Bogart. So I don't know how much these heading differentiators really mean. Then part 4 is postmodern. There's an article in here on Tolstoy, one on John Sayles, one on Charles Ives, Mark Morris. And then the last part is personals. And I don't know, maybe that'll be personal essays, but I love this author, so I'm happy to have it. It's also a pretty little volume. Then these next two are an author I love, an author that I've read pretty much everything this author has written. I know a lot of it. And, of course, this author is responsible for a couple of books over on that criticism bookcase that I go to a lot. And that's Gore Vidal, the great man of letters, the American man of letters, Gore Vidal. And I found 2 of his. Reflections on a Sinking Ship. There's young Gore Vidal. As far as he was concerned, from the age of 13 on, he considered the ship to be sinking. Whatever the ship, wherever it was, and whatever point in its voyage it was. And this is just a collection of pieces. What are some of the titles that he was so familiar with? The Wit and Wisdom of John Kenneth Galbraith, John O'Hara's old novels, Miss Sontag's second new novel, Writers and the World, Henry Miller, writing about his own work, a piece called Edmund Wilson Tax Dodger, a piece called The Liberal Dilemma, a piece on William Manchester's Death of a President. And, I hesitated for a fraction of a second when I saw this book and the next one, because a great many of these pieces will be included in the book that I was talking about, a gigantic volume called United States by Gore Vidal, that includes a huge amount of his essays. It's a big 1,000-page volume, and I go to it all the time. Mine is heavily reinforced. But I also have an homage to Daniel Shays, which is it was his most famous book before United States of nonfiction. And I figure if I have that, I might as well have all the other individual collections that I can find, especially since, yes, there will be overlap. A great many of these essays will then be reprinted in the United States, but there'll also be the ones that Vidal left out that I will still want to read. An author this good, I want to read everything, and I want to have them at my fingertips. Instead of thinking, is such and such a piece one that he didn't include in United States? So I got Reflections on a Sinking Ship, and I also got Rocking the Boat, which is the same thing. It's it's the exact same kind of thing. It's more collected pieces from Gore Vidal. So what are some titles we've got here? Piece on John Kennedy, piece on Barry Goldwater, piece on the House Un-American Activities Committee. Some of you will have to Google that. Piece on George Bernard Shaw, on Eugene O'Neill. A note on the novel. His piece on John Dos Passos, which is in United States. His piece on another piece on Norman Mailer, which is in United States. But there'll be a lot of things in here that aren't in United States. In either one of these things. So I definitely want them, especially since everything was dirt cheap at the Brattle. Then this next one, a very good example of the Brattle will provide. The other day, I was talking, I don't remember if I was doing it here or on my sexy Instagram page, but I was talking about James Morris's Pax Britannica trilogy. These were books written by James Morris before James Morris became Jan Morris. And they are a trilogy, a very impressionistic, very colorful, incredibly readable trilogy about the British Empire. The first volume is At Heaven's Command, which is about the rise of the empire. The second volume is called Pax Britannica. That's also the name of the trilogy. And then the third volume is Farewell the Trumpets, which has Queen Victoria and Winston Churchill on the cover of the, I think it's Harcourt Brace Jovanovic paperbacks. And I love those trade paperbacks. I have had them many, many times, but they are not well made. And I'm hard on my books. So I hauled out my trilogy of trade paperbacks, of those old trade paperbacks the other day. In order to look one thing up, I ended up reading huge chunks because it's just so readable. But every time I turned the page, I could hear cracking and creaking. And I don't want that. So even while I had those out, I was thinking, you know, what I really need is to look for these in hardcover. Now, there was a collectible set, I think Folio Society or something. Several of you mentioned it, and I think somebody emailed it to me as well. That Folio Society did a volume of these, but Folio Society, for me, would be pearls before swine. I am too hard on my books. I wouldn't keep them in any kind of shape. And Folio Society advocates, devotees, consider it virtually sacrilege to write in Folio Society. You absolutely don't do it. And I write in all my books. So what I needed was an ordinary hardcover set of the Pax Britannica trilogy. And as soon as I realized that, I thought, well, the Brattle will provide. This is something I definitely want. It's not a whim. I go back to the Pax Britannica trilogy regularly. It's a work of history I think is a classic. I really love it. And today I found the first one. I found Heaven's Command. It's got an ugly cover, and the cover is also in rotten shape. So when I am reinforcing the cover, I will put some new visual here so that I don't have to look at a poor drawing of the Crystal Palace or whatever that is supposed to be. But this is Volume 1 of the Pax Britannica trilogy, and I feel certain that Volume 2 and Volume 3 will crop up in the course of time in a hardcover. It doesn't have to be pretty for me. I just know I'm going to go back to it. It's my favorite Victorian history. So I found Volume 1, and now I will wait for Volumes 2 and Volume 3. The Brattle will provide. And this next one was a rebuy, a replacement volume. I have this. I've read it many, many times, but I found a brand new copy in one of those library-style plastic dust jacket covers. And my copy, the copy that I have and go back to all the time, I went back to it just last week, is in much worse shape than this. So I grabbed it. If it was $1, I grabbed it. This is The World of Washington Irving by Van Wyck Brooks. And this is his study of the first American author to make a career as an author, the first American author to become an international sensation. There's a lot more to Washington Irving. He was a lot more fascinating a figure. There's a lot more to him than just The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. He's one of my favorite people to read about. And I have another copy of this, but this thing is perfect. I'd rather have it to last me because, like the Pax Britannica trilogy, I go back to it. I know that it's not sitting there on the shelf. I go back to it regularly. So, time to retire my old copy and put this perfect copy in its place. Then we have the last of the critical books, the books that are going to go on that critical bookcase. That Hannah saw when she was here. Hannah at Hannah's Books came to visit, came to Hyde Cottage, a couple of weeks ago now, and saw my bookcase. She didn't spend as much time with it as I think she wanted to because I wanted her attention, and so did Frida. But it is a thing of beauty. It is a temple to my craft. And I found one last volume for today to go in there. So that is what? 5. 2 Gore Vidals, Terry Teachout, Virginia Woolf, and also Camille Paglia. This is Provocations from 2018. This is an advanced copy. I didn't see the finished copy. I don't recall that I ever got this from Pantheon Books. I don't think I ever did. This is a huge collection of her essays, and quite a few of them are about books. She's an absolutely terrific writer, and I say that despite the fact that her book, Sexual Personae, is one of the only books ever written in any of the languages that I read that I simply don't understand. I don't understand a single thing it's trying to say or do. Not a single thing. And the only consolation I take from that is that I've never met anyone. I've never met any reader in any persuasion at all who claims to understand it. I think this is an odd thing to say about an author that I'm really happy to add to my collection, but I think Sexual Personae is, in fact, gibberish. It's not egotism that makes me say that. It might sound like egotism on the surface for me to say, well, if I've repeatedly tried to understand a book and I don't, it must be gibberish. You might think that's egotism, that surely the problem is still with me and not with the book, but I'm a professional reader, and I have been for a long, long time. I think that Sexual Personae is gibberish. I don't think it makes any sense at all. But I've read, she had a collection of a short collection of her essays that I assume is subsumed into this. I'll have to double check in case I have that. That is amazing. Her shorter pieces are incredible. I'm tempted now to wonder, what was the name of that piece? Sex, Art, and American Culture. I think that was the one. And I wonder if all of the pieces from there are in here. And one of the ways that I could tell would be, one of the standout pieces was called Junk Bonds and Corporate Raiders. I wonder if that is in here. Oh, this has so much great stuff in it. Oh, my. Oh, my. I remember a lot of these pieces. Camille Paglia is one of those writers where I will go out of my way to read her new piece. I will buy a journal on the newsstand if I see her on the cover, even though I don't usually get the novel or the journal. This has so much in it. Oh, my. The Legend of Princess Diana, Ayn Rand, Helen Gurley Brown, Martha Stewart. Oh, fantastic. But does this have Junk Bonds and Corporate Raiders, or am I not getting all of Camille Paglia? Okay, it doesn't look like it's in here, so I might have to see if I have that volume. But there's going to be, I'm sure, a ton of stuff in here that I have never read. I will start with the section on books and work my way out from there. Then this next one is an anthology, one of these old Avenel anthologies that aren't made anymore. I'm sure that in your used bookstore you have seen them, one kind or another. They made anthologies where they would put together 5 or 6 books from one author. They'd commission a new cover art. They had a very uniform look to them. I've seen them at the Brattle for every author under the sun, from Agatha Christie to Robert Ludlum to you name it. And there's one that I've always wanted, even though I have everything in it many, many times over. There was one that I always wanted, and I found it today. I found their volume of P.G. Wodehouse. This is what I mean, these old Avenel books that look just like this. This is what they look like on the side. I'm sure you've seen them at your used bookstore. There's the author and then a line, and then just the name of the books that are in here. In this case, I think you have 2 Bertie Wooster novels and then 3 books that aren't Bertie Wooster. And I'm sure, like, for instance, The Old Reliable, I don't think I have in any printed form. I've been waiting to find this volume, even though I have the Most P.G. Wodehouse and the Weekend Wodehouse and the Vintage Wodehouse. I have a million P.G. Wodehouse anthologies. I love them. Absolutely love them. And I'm happy to add this one. This is one of the ones, a lot of these books are going to go in the Books About Books bookcase. This is one of the only ones I got today that I know is going in the little book room. I could do worse than to have 5 different P.G. Wodehouse anthologies in the little bookworm. I will make room for this one in there, but probably not before I read at least one thing in here. The summer is fading. The summer is when you read P.G. Wodehouse, and the summer is fading. So I will probably read either The Butler Did It or The Old Reliable from this volume. Very happy to find it. It's been years since I saw it. Then this next book is an author that I love, and I had read this book when it first came out. I really liked it. I don't know why I didn't keep it. This is Rome by Robert Hughes. I've seen this in, I think Mark has a copy of, Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads has a copy of this. And I've seen it in other book collections as well, and that's justifiably because it's really, really good. It's Robert Hughes meditating on Rome. That's basically what it is, a huge personal essay about Rome. Its history, most especially its art, the rhythms of its street life, his encounters with the city over and over again, which to me makes a huge amount of sense because although Robert Hughes hailed from Australia and made America his home for a long time, he was quintessentially a Roman. He was quintessentially a 2nd century Roman, a high-born 2nd century Roman. So somebody with hands like a stevedore, but who had never served in the military, and who had a mouth like a barroom brawler when you made him mad, but who had the finest aesthetic distinction imaginable, and was above all things, for the 2nd century Roman of the type I'm talking about, who was above all things worldly. Robert Hughes was. It's difficult to put a definition on that adjective, but he was above all things worldly, and it makes this book just fantastic. And I was extra in the mood for it because I am, at the moment, currently very slowly making my way through his great critical book, Nothing If Not Critical, which is on that bookcase. I'm slowly making my way through it in ebook form on my iPhone. And the wonder of that book, Nothing If Not Critical, is a collection of his art criticism. He was, first and foremost, the world's greatest art critic. An art critic you would love to read, even if you have had many negative experiences with art critics and think they're all talking to each other and not to me. Give him a try on any artist. The yardstick of how great Nothing If Not Critical is as a collection is that it's almost entirely about artists that I don't care about at all. And yet I can't stop reading the essays. That takes talent. And this is just a huge block of Robert Hughes. I don't know why I keep getting rid of it. I won't get rid of this one. And I will stuff into it all of the clippings that I have about Robert Hughes and also about Rome. And then we're finishing up. We're getting there, don't you worry. It was an active day at the Brattle, as it always is. My next 2 things are cartoon collections, New Yorker cartoon collections. I've said many times on this channel that I love New Yorker cartoon collections. I think New Yorker cartoons for 70, 80 years were an incredible art form all of their own, quite distinct from other cartoons in other periodicals, and an unbelievably good, interesting, and fun commentary on the times. And they've done many big volumes where they collect years, 1925 to 1955, things like that. I have a lot of those. But they also have done themed little volumes, and I have a lot of those, but I found 2 today that I didn't have. The first one is the New Yorker Book of Money cartoons. And this is all of their, a lot of their classic financial-related cartoons. There's one that I think is the greatest one of them all, sort of the quintessential New Yorker money cartoon. I wonder if I'll be able to find it quickly. There's one that economist wonks will get that the rest of the people won't. You've got 2 stumblebums looking off in the distance, and the caption is, "There it is again, the invisible hand of the marketplace giving us the finger." But there's another one that is the clouds. I remember this one. You've got a bunch of guys toasting in their elaborate dining room, and the caption is, "To the rich, the very rich, and the super rich." Have I left anybody out? But the quintessential New Yorker cartoon when it comes to money. Let me see if I can find it. I love these theme collections. I blow right through them in 5 seconds once I get them. But then I go back to them over and over again. I even, scandalously, go back to the New Yorker Book of Cat cartoons. I often go back to the New Yorker Book of Cat cartoons. I don't, not particularly proud of that fact. Let's see here. It's just 1 per page. It's not crowded like the like the annuals, like the ones that are year after year. Here's another one. There's a guy before the pearly gates, and the caption is, "You had more money than God. That's a big no-no." But there's a particular art. There's another one. There's the solar system. See? Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, all the orbits of the planets, and way out here, the check in the mail. That's probably outdated now, right? Because people don't put checks in the mail anymore. Now here, we have to pause for the siren. The important thing to remember is that there is no emergency. They're just getting through the intersection. That's all. That's all they're doing is getting through the intersection. Oh, don't tell me after all this I missed the thing. Well, as fascinating as this channel is, you don't want to just sit here watching me turn pages. It's in here, so we'll just have to... Oh, no, wait. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's in the next one. This is the New Yorker Book of Money cartoons. My only quibble with it is that the editor of this one, who doesn't say, the introduction by Christopher Buckley, but the editor of this one decided to skew much more recently. Of course, you could fill a book 5 times this size with New Yorker cartoons just about the Great Depression. And nothing in here goes back that far. And so they don't have one of my favorite money-related New Yorker cartoons by my beloved Helen Hokinson. The one where she dealt with these overdressed, frou-frou New York matrons who were clueless but endearing. And there were a series of her cartoons that were about a ladies' club in Scarsborough or Van Dyke, or some extremely tony New York country suburb. And one of them was a woman saying that she was happy to accept the ladies' club nomination for treasurer, provided every little penny doesn't have to come out exactly right. And I wanted that to be in the money cartoon one, but it's not. Instead, we have the other one that I found is the New Yorker Book of Doctor cartoons, and this also includes psychiatrists. And this is the one that has the what I think really is the the moment of truth. Is there a doctor in the house? Am I a doctor? This one has what I think is the quintessential money cartoon, but it's in the doctor cartoon. Instead, you have a man at the doctor's office, and the caption is, "When you say I'm sound as a dollar, doctor, just what do you mean?" And this also has, this is a classic one, this Peter Arno one from a long time ago. It was a worried-looking patient. The doctor's on the phone, and the caption is, "By all means, dear, buy it if you really want it. We'll find the money for it somehow." But this also has the quintessential New Yorker psychiatrist cartoon. Yes, this one here. There's a chicken in a counselor's office on the couch, and you can guess the caption. The caption says, "Well, why do you think you crossed the road?" So I found both of these. These will go with... I have a New Yorker collection about criticism. I have a New Yorker collection about dogs and cats, and it's just crime and punishment, lawyers, all that sort of thing. I'll take these themed ones, and I'll just add them to my huge shelf of New Yorker cartoons. And I also have a huge shelf, to finish out, I have a huge shelf of Sherlock Holmes stuff, obviously, right? Most bookish people have a section of Sherlock Holmes books, where I have collected Sherlock Holmes. I have individual Sherlock Holmes volumes that I really like. I have various editions of The Hound of the Baskervilles. I have pastiches, Sherlock Holmes pastiches. I have collections of essays about Sherlock Holmes, like Naked is the Best Disguise, or The Life and Times of Sherlock Holmes, that sort of thing. And I found an item today that's going to go on that shelf. I don't think I've ever seen this before, and I still don't know what to make of it. It's gonna give me a lot of pleasure to go through this thing. This is A Study in Scarlet, a Sherlock Holmes murder mystery based on the famous story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in a large hardcover. You might think, well, why would it be based on the story? Why wouldn't it just be, maybe this is a big annotated edition of A Study in Scarlet? No, this is more than that. This is weird. In this book, the compilers of the book give you, in fantastic visuals, they give you the items that go into A Study in Scarlet. Here is a letter that the Savoy Hotel sends, a notice they send to Dr. John Watson when he's new in London. The Study in Scarlet is the story where Watson, freshly invalided from Afghanistan, meets Sherlock Holmes for the first time. And one of the reasons that he does is because he's looking for lodgings. And one of the reasons he's looking for lodgings is because his soldiers' half pay is not really upkeeping him. He needs to split his rooming bill. And they give us a little letter on Savoy Hotel stationery that says, "Dear Dr. Watson, we must with regret draw your attention to the unhealthy appearance of your account, which has not improved since we brought its ailing condition to your notice this time last week. We are already charging you an exceptionally favorable rate for bed and breakfast, and we can only suggest, with great respect, that further to reduce your expenses, you forego the breakfast or vacate the bed, or both. We also have reason to believe that you are concealing a dog on the premises." And Watson writes down below, well, what does he expect? And just on a letter, like a normal person was, he writes out his expenses. None of this is real. Somebody had to fabricate all of this. That final line, "we suspect you're keeping a dog on the premises," is a reference to Watson's description of himself in A Study in Scarlet, where he's listing his faults for Sherlock Holmes and mentions, "I keep a bull pup." No mention is ever made in the Sherlock Holmes stories of Watson having a dog. And that has sent a lot of Sherlockians down the path of studying Victorian slang at the time when Doyle wrote the story, to say maybe it means that Watson is telling Holmes he has a bad temper, he's prone to depression. What did having a bull pup mean if it didn't literally mean having a puppy? I think that's fascinating. That the author is clearly thinking that's just literal. But this takes you through Watson meeting Holmes and gives you letters from Lestrade. It gives you notices in the paper. It allows you to see the mystery of The Study in Scarlet unfolding as if you didn't know it, as if you didn't know how it comes out, through the appurtenances of the time, the documents, the police ledgers, the photographs. This thing is full of photographs. See if I can find you in there. Pills on a table there. More handwritten documentation. See that? This is all fabricated. None of this actually exists in the story. You have more newspaper columns of the time. It says, "Put your detective ingenuity to the test and tackle Sherlock Holmes' most perplexing case. Every document, note, and piece of physical evidence used by the world-famous sleuth to solve the mystery is faithfully reproduced in this book. Inspect the clues, examine the photographs, study the tracks and footprints, read Dr. Watson's private journal and Sherlock Holmes' famous monographs. Pore over the authentic telegrams, statements, and newspaper clippings of 1881, the year of the murder." I don't think I've ever seen this before. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to go through this thing. And of course, it's going to lead me to reread A Study in Scarlet. That's just a given. So there you have it. A very good Brattle day. Beautiful day. And I was there early enough so that the heat had not settled in. It's a little bit warm now to be going to the Brattle. Oh, I think that's going to end. I think the rest of the week is going to be daytime highs in the mid-70s. 15 degrees cooler than this. But anyway, there you go. That is a Brattle haul for you on a very special day for one person who may or may not be watching this video. We have A Study in Scarlet, but not the story. This is the documentary evidence for the story. We have the New Yorker Book of Money cartoons and the New Yorker Book of Doctor cartoons. Great, they'll go on the shelf with all my others. We have Rome by Robert Hughes, the great art critic. We have the Avenel collected P.G. Wodehouse, 5 different novels, not all of which are Jeeves and Wooster, if I remember correctly. We have Provocations by Camille Paglia, great essayist, a rabble-rouser of the first water. We have The World of Washington Irving by Van Wyck Brooks, in a perfect replacement copy. We have Heaven's Command by James Morris. This is first volume in the Pax Britannica trilogy. We have Rocking the Boat by Gore Vidal, and also Reflections Upon a Sinking Ship by Gore Vidal. 2 smaller essay collections, some of which have probably been subsumed into United States. We have a Terry Teachout reader, which I'd never even seen before. We have Horace Gregory's translation of the poems of Catullus with an introduction and maybe notes. We have Death's Men, the ordinary men filling the trenches in World War I. We have the annotated Second Common Reader by Virginia Woolf, to go with my first Common Reader once I've reinforced it. We have The Best of Philip K. Dick, bit of a contradiction in terms there from this old Del Rey mass market paperback. And finally, we have this what is this actually called? Past and Present. This little volume with the acetate pages to show poor buried Pompeii and Herculaneum. Fantastic. Lots and lots of fun stuff for me to go through when I should be doing writing. So I'm going to wrap this up before it goes to an hour, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.